The tale of two tapes, one from the right drawing fire from the left tonight, the other from the left drawing fire from the right. Neither one is new, though parts may have been unseen. We're frankly not able to say for sure. We're pretty certain, though, of this. The timing of their release or possibly their re-release seems expressly designed to score political points. The first is of a speech then Senator Barack Obama gave to a ministers' conference in Hampton, Virginia back in 2007. Conservative website, The Daily Caller, bills it in their own words as, quote, Obama's other race speech, a barely recognizable Obama. Headline goes on to say, quote, lavishes praise on Reverend Wright, claims government spends too much on suburbs, not, quote, our neighborhoods. Earlier tonight, we played the clip in which Mr. Obama praised his pastor, now his ex-pastor, Reverend Jeremiah Wright. Here now are the remarks about how the response to Hurricane Katrina differed from that for Hurricane Andrew and for 9/11 attacks.
Down in New Orleans, where they still have not rebuilt 20 months later. There's a law, federal law, when you get reconstruction money from the federal government called the Stafford Act. And basically it says when you get federal money, you've got to give a 10% match. The local government's got to come up with 10%. Every $10 federal government comes up with, local government's got to give $1. Now, here's the thing. When 9/11 happened in New York City, they waived the Stafford Act, said this is too serious a problem. We can't expect New York City to rebuild on its own. Forget that dollar you got to put in. Well, here's $10. And that was the right thing to do. When Hurricane Andrew struck in Florida, people said, look at this devastation. We don't expect you to come up with your own money. Here's the money to rebuild. We're not going to wait for you to scratch it together because you're part of the American family. What's happening down in New Orleans? Where's your dollar? Where's your Stafford Act money? Makes no sense. Tells me the bullet hasn't been taken out. Tells me that somehow the people down in New Orleans, they don't care about as much.
President Obama, that was 5 years ago. Now, you can decide for yourself whether this shows a side of Barack Obama that's never been seen before, as the Daily Caller suggests, or if it's nothing new. Some critics have been pointing out the president seems to be speaking in a different cadence, a different kind of voice than he does in other speeches. You can also decide the same thing about the content of this next video. The Huffington Post first linked this video to it earlier today. It's Paul Ryan speaking at a 2011 dinner hosted by conservative magazine The American Spectator. Now, some of the left tonight are claiming these remarks sound a lot like Mitt Romney's comment video on the 47%.
The good news is survey after survey, poll after poll still shows that we are a center-right 70-30 country. 70% of Americans want the American dream. They believe in the American idea. Only 30% want the welfare state. What that tells us is at least half of those people who are currently in that category are there not of their wish or their will.
Now, liberal websites are focusing on the Ryan speech. Conservative websites are focusing on the Obama speech. The Huffington Post says it learned of the clip from a reader. A Ryan campaign spokesman had this reaction, saying only 30% want the welfare state. Paul Ryan's message at this open forum, just as it is every day on the campaign trail, was one of upward mobility and opportunity for all Americans. The discussion was about the size of government and nothing more. So let's talk about this, whether these videos amount to much of anything. Joining us now for part of that discussion, political analyst Roland Martin, also Eric Erickson, editor-in-chief of RedState.com, and Professor Boyce Watkins of Syracuse University. He's the founder of YourBlackWorld.com. Eric, let me start with you on this Obama tape. To you, what is the significance of it?
I think the significance of it is the media. It was the media that portrayed Barack Obama as some sort of post-racial president. It wasn't the Obama campaign. The media for a long time has portrayed Barack Obama as above a lot of the old political rhetoric that both sides did. But, you know, here's Barack Obama telling a black crowd that basically they aren't part of the American community. He said that Florida was with Hurricane Andrew and that with Hurricane Katrina it wasn't. And the facts he was using simply weren't true. Hurricane Katrina got $110 billion to the Gulf Coast, well more than was spent in New York was covered with a Stafford exemption. They got additional grants from the federal government. Had a white politician done this to a white crowd, saying a black president was denying funds to a white section of the country as not part of the community, the press would be tearing him alive. If you don't believe me, ask Trent Lott.
Are you saying that I mean, is it also the way that President Obama was speaking that raises eyebrows for you, and that this somehow shows President Obama is different than the way he regularly portrays himself?
Anderson, I'm from Louisiana. If I were talking to you the way I normally talk to friends back home, you probably wouldn't be able to understand me. I don't fault a politician.
My dad's from Mississippi, so
pandering to a crowd.
I do that when I go down to Mississippi reunion.
Yeah, you know, this is a politician pandering to a crowd. George Bush would sound a little more Southern below the Mason-Dixon line. Barack Obama to a black crowd, very much like Hillary Clinton and Selma a few years ago. The right still lampoons her for trying to put on a very thick Southern accent. Politicians of both sides do that. I don't hold him at fault for trying to sound like a pandering politician.
Roland Martin, what do you make of this Obama video?
I think it's utterly laughable that Sean Hannity, Matt Drudge, Daily Caller, and the rest of these folks are making this out to be something significant. You know, there was something that was written on June 7th, 2007 on CNN.com. It was a column that I actually wrote. The headline was called "Obama's Quiet Riots Are Real." And so for anyone to assert...
Quiet riot is a phrase he was using in this very speech.
No. But my point is, I was referencing the speech that he also gave to the Hampton Ministers Conference. And so here's the deal. You talk about the amount of money spent on the Gulf Coast. First of all, New Orleans and the Gulf Coast, that's Alabama, Mississippi. End of the day, okay? Is this going to have any impact on this election? Absolutely not. This is nothing more than Sean Hannity's infatuation with Reverend Jeremiah Wright. Pure and simple.
Boyce Watkins, is there significance to this, do you believe?
I think that there is no material significance here, but the Republicans are very good at taking nothing and turning it into what appears to be something. We have to remember that we live in a country that has for 400 years been poisoned by the psychological disease of racism, and it doesn't take much to spark that back up. If you look at what President Obama is saying, of course you wouldn't hear white politicians saying what he said, because African Americans have a unique history in this country. We have a history of documented discrimination that is effectively undeniable. So when you look at what happened in Katrina, anybody in their right mind would say that, yes, there was some disparity there. And any president, white or black, should note that disparity not as a criticism on the greatness of America, but really as an opportunity for our country to get a little bit better.
But I don't think that's what President Obama was doing.
Go ahead, Eric.
When you listen to him, he's telling a black crowd, he uses the phrase regarding Hurricane Andrew as that the government saw those people in Florida as part of the American community. And the people who were affected by Hurricane Katrina, my parents and my family, for example, as something other. But he's addressing a largely black crowd, and he's making the point that very clearly that they in New Orleans got treated differently from people in New York and people in Florida because they somehow weren't part of the American community.
There certainly wasn't parity in the treatment.
Fanning the flames of racism.
One at a time, Boyce. Go ahead, Boyce.
Can you really argue that there was parity in the treatment there? There's no way you can argue that. We have to accept the fact that President Obama is not a man that is here to offer just cosmetic diversity to the White House, to just carry black skin into the White House to make us feel better. It's okay for him to come out of the closet and to be a black man sometimes and to use that opportunity to talk about some of the things that our country needs to discuss. Nobody, especially internationally, can see what happened in Katrina and pretend that race did not play a role in how that event was portrayed and how that encompassed.
One at a time. I know you guys are both on Skype, so it's a little complicated. But Roland, critics of President Obama are watching this video and are saying, well, look, he's speaking differently to a crowd, and he's saying things that he has not said to a larger audience. Is that a fair criticism, or to Boyce's point, is it because of the crowd he's speaking to?
The first thing. Speaker Dennis Hastert said at this time, questioned whether we should rebuild New Orleans. That got significant pushback from people in that region. He was specific about the city of New Orleans. So to Eric's point, that actually did come up. The second thing, though...
It wasn't a racial point. It was about New Orleans being below sea level.
One second, okay? My point is people in New Orleans took it as they were offended by that. But Anderson, here's the deal. Him speaking in front of a black audience, I speak in front of black audiences. He has talked to the Congressional Black Caucus, okay, how he speaks and what he says. I heard him speak to the NAACP in 2009 when he talked about telling black kids in terms of what we eat, in terms of school, things along those lines. And he got criticized for basically lecturing African Americans that he wouldn't do in front of the white audience. I didn't hear anybody white or conservative complain about that. That was called a pull yourself up by the bootstrap speech. And so let's just be honest. Politicians have always talked different ways to different groups, whether you're Democrats or Republicans, conservative or liberal.
But Roland, what critics of this are saying is that his whole message of we're not a white America or black America or red state America or blue state America, they're saying this shows him being divisive. To that, you say what? I think we lost Roland. He's on a train.
Anderson, I got to say, I'm as a native of Louisiana, I've got to say I'm horrified and really offended by this continued myth perpetuated by Democrats that somehow Louisiana and New Orleans were treated horribly by the Bush administration because they were black. You know, Mississippi got hit as well. I've got an entire family, friends who were gone because of Hurricane Katrina in southern Mississippi. Mississippi was treated exactly identically by the federal government as Louisiana and had its act together. It wasn't a George Bush thing. It was a Louisiana government, notoriously corrupt, notoriously inept, and to hang that on some sort of racism against Louisiana, not only is it deeply offensive, but it continues to perpetrate wounds in this country that probably would close except for people like Barack Obama telling a black crowd that you were treated differently because you were black.
We want to have more of this discussion. We got to stop right now, though, just for time. Eric Erickson, Professor Boyce Watkins, Roland Martin, appreciate it. No doubt we'll be hearing more about this tomorrow. Up next.